Does alcohol really keep you from freezing to death? And do you really eat spiders in your sleep? I'm Bob from World 5 List, and I'm going to reveal to you 9 lies that everyone believes. Number 9. Goldfish only have a 3-second memory. Now, I'm not afraid to admit from time to time that I channel my inner Dory from Finding Nemo because I can be incredibly forgetful. I remember one of my friends once told me this strange thing about goldfish and that they only had a 3-second memory. Just take a moment and think about that. It means that every time a goldfish swims around in his little bowl, he's seeing it in a completely different way because he just forgot where he came from 3 seconds ago. Finding Nemo takes this idea and puts it into the right character of Dory, who suffers from short-term memory loss, and it doesn't help to make the myth about how dumb that fish really are go away, especially when we're seeing characters like this in children's movies. Now, it was a child who may have finally debunked the myth. A 15-year-old from Adelaide, Australia decided to conduct a science experiment. Rory Stokes, a student at the Australian Science and Mathematics School, took a small tank of goldfish and placed a red logo brick next to their feeding area. After about 3 weeks of placing the red bricks in first before feeding the fish would come before food was even displayed. Then Rory didn't add the red logos for an entire week, and when he put the bricks back in again, the fish remembered that it signified it was feeding time. The brick would trigger their memory that the red brick meant food. Now, although the experiment was simple, it also proved that goldfish retained information from days and perhaps even weeks before. Definitely more than 3 seconds. And they're much smarter than we previously believed. Number 8. Shaving your legs makes the hair thicker. Now, this one came as a bit of a shock when I discovered the age-old myth about shaving isn't actually true. When I first started shaving my face as a teenager, people would tell me that the more I shaved, the more thicker and stronger it would grow back. But it turns out it's not really all that true, and it may be another reason why my beard game has been off all these years. Shaving various parts of body hair is a daily routine for lots and lots of people around the world, and I'm sure that a whole lot of these people believed, just like me, that the hair would grow back stronger or even thicker if it was shaved off constantly. One biologist by the name of Kurt Sten, however, has studied hair for more than 30 years. I mean, everyone has their fetish, right? But he also knows a thing or two about it. The hair follicle scientist told Business Insider that it was really easy to see why the myth was believable. The hair that's been shaved off often feels very thick and prickly. One portion of the hair follicle is thicker, but as it grows, it actually begins to thin out, and we only notice it when it's at its thickest of appearances. He explained that it's also incredibly difficult to even demonstrate, but that the easiest way to think about it is if a bald man shaves, it doesn't mean that his hair is going to grow back. So for anyone who thought they could get their hair back faster by shaving it, it may come back a whole lot more quickly, but not more thickly. Number 7. Vikings had horned helmets. Contrary to popular belief, it turns out that they never wore horned helmets. The earliest depictions of Vikings between the 8th and 11th centuries showed warriors who were either bareheaded or wore simple helmets made out of iron or leather. Archaeologists have spent years trying to track down a Viking helmet adorned with horns, but it turns out there's only been one complete helmet which can be definitively called Viking era. It was discovered in 1943 on a farm in Norway and had a rounded iron cap with a guard around the eyes and nose, and no horns in sight. The first depiction of the Vikings that we've come to know and love were created by Scandinavian artists in the 1800s, who included the headgear in their portrayal of the raiders. And then in the 1870s, the costumes were also included in an opera called Der Ring des Nibelungen. This would only perpetuate the idea that Vikings wore helmets, and at a time before archaeology, people just went with it. Number 6. Sleeping with a fan will kill you. But first, let me know about what lies you were told as a child in the comments below. And be sure that you're subscribed to World 5 List so that you don't miss out on more videos like this one. Now, is there anything more terrifying than the whirring sound of a fan? According to Korean culture, there's a superstition where running an electric fan in a closed room with unopened windows or no windows at all is a fatal decision that's going to end your life. There is some interesting stories about how the superstition came about, but the most widely held conspiracy is the South Korean government invented the myth as propaganda in order to curb energy consumption during the 1970s energy crisis. The myth actually began circulating with the introduction of fans in the early 1920s and 30s, so although the government propaganda story probably isn't true, it may have helped to circulate the rumor even longer. Electric fans sold in the country are equipped with timer knobs to set them for a certain amount of minutes before bedtime. So the next time that you go to sleep in South Korea, don't complain. It's for your own good. Number 5. Napoleon was a short person. Napoleon became such a well-known and famous man that he developed his own complex. It was called, of course, Napoleon complex, a theorized complex occurring in shorter people. It would be characterized by any short person who had a domineering personality and a short fuse. See what I did there? The complex would be named after Emperor Napoleon I of France. It was folklore during the time of his reign that he had been overcompensating for something in his life, particularly his height, by searching for more power and war to gain territory. Interestingly enough, though, he was 5 foot 7 inches tall at the time of his death, which was an average height for a French male peasant of the day. It was, however, quite short for an officer, and may have been why he continuously lowered the minimum height to be a French soldier to begin with. All this time, I thought Napoleon was short, but as it turns out, he was pretty average compared to the rest of the population. Number 4, we have 5 senses. Now, during all of my school days, I was taught that we have 5 senses, and I never really gave thought or questioned it, mostly because if I did, I'd get smacked with a ruler. Smell, taste, touch, hearing, and eyesight were all that I knew, and it's all that I really wanted to know. It turns out that we may have way more than just the 5 senses. Neuroscientists knew that we had a whole lot more, and they argue that we actually have between 22 and 33 different senses. The myth that we only have 5 senses actually comes from an age-old source in Aristotle. He would be the first to suggest that there were 5 senses, which are part of all of our realities, but as scientists have studied the body over the years, they've found that there are actually a lot more working together. One sense can actually manipulate how another one perceives the surroundings. The things we experience are part of a multi-sensory experience, and it's likely why we haven't even grazed the surface of them all. Number 3, alcohol keeps you warm. Now, I'm really no stranger to the idea when I have an adult beverage that my cheeks become flushed and I'll start to perspire. So it only comes as a surprise that alcohol, well, it isn't actually warming me up. The culprit behind the warm, fuzzy feeling is actually your blood. Side effects from alcohol consumption can make you feel warmer, but as your blood vessels widen, it's created what's known as the beer blanket phenomenon. Humans have a consistent body temperature of 98 degrees Fahrenheit, and heat is generated with your metabolism. The skin has receptors which are attuned to temperature changes, so when you drink, it changes your blood redistribution, making you actually believe that it's hot when it's not. So if you ever think that you don't need a coat on a winter night, Remember, you're not actually warm. The alcohol is just making you think that you are. And you're also probably drunk. Also, don't try to dance, because you're probably only going to embarrass yourself. Number 2, you swallow spiders in your sleep. Now, I probably suffer from arachnophobia, which is why I've believed this weird fact for most of my life, and I'm going to ease everyone's mind with this development. It's been an age-old myth that we swallow about 8 spiders every year while we sleep, which is really creepy and pretty disturbing. Well, have no fear, because it turns out that it's all a lie. Or, well, kind of, because the truth is, it may be more like we accidentally consume 8 spiders in our lifetime and not in a year's time. According to Scientific American, the myth actually goes against the spider's biology, because they like to hide in places where they're out of sight. So you're more likely to get a few flies or bed bugs crawling in your mouth if you're not careful. Number 1, vaccines can give you autism. Now, medical professionals and scientists have been trying to combat myths that circulate about vaccines for years, and it seems like every time there's a new vaccine that's released, there's also a lot of misconceptions and lies thrown out to the public. One of these would happen to be the idea that vaccines actually increase the risk of autism. A study published by the British surgeon Andrew Wakefield in 1997 suggested that the MMR vaccine was increasing autism in British children. The paper had discredited the findings because of some serious procedural errors, as well as financial conflicts of interest and other ethical violations. It also became such a problem that Wakefield actually lost his medical license. The hypothesis would be taken seriously, and more studies would be conducted, although none have been conclusive in finding any evidence that links vaccines and autism in children. Thanks for watching. Do you believe that any of the lies that I revealed to you are still lies? Do you still believe them? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure you're subscribed, and I'll see you next time.